Sarah Winnemucca was born around 1844 to Tuboytone, a Northern Paiute woman, and Winnemucca, a Shoshone man who became part of the Northern Paiute community through marriage. They named their daughter Thokmetni, meaning shellflower. At the time of her birth, the Northern Paiute were a nomadic people, living in what is now western Nevada and eastern Oregon. Sarah spent her early childhood moving between encampments with her family, learning the traditions and practices of her people. From a young age, Sarah Winnemucca received mixed messages about white settlers. The Northern Paiute generally viewed them with suspicion, aware that settlers often tried to steal from indigenous people and take their land. However, Sarah's grandfather, Truquizo, a renowned warrior who had helped the Americans during the Mexican-American War, believed that learning to work with white settlers was the best way for Sarah and her siblings to succeed in a rapidly changing world. Truquizo took Sarah on trading trips to California and arranged for her to work as a domestic servant with white American families. Through these experiences, Sarah learned to read and write in English and Spanish and gained insights into the settlers' culture and practices. It was during this time that she adopted the name Sarah, which she used for the rest of her life. Her knowledge of both Northern Paiute and American cultures made her a powerful advocate for her people, but it also left her feeling like an outsider in both societies. In 1859, news of the Comstock lode discovery in Northern Paiute lands spread across the United States, attracting hundreds of prospectors eager to stake their claims and make their fortunes. This influx led to conflicts with the Northern Paiute and other local tribes. That same year, the U.S. government forced the Northern Paiute to relocate to the Pyramid Lake Reservation, abandoning their nomadic lifestyle. The reservation couldn't support their traditional way of life, leading to significant struggles. In 1860, tensions escalated when two Northern Paiute women were attacked and raped by white settlers, prompting the tribe to rebel. Although the Northern Paiute successfully defeated the local settlers and miners, this victory came at a high cost. In 1861, the U.S. government established the Nevada Territory and granted the governor extensive powers to control the Northern Paiute and ensure their subjugation. In an effort to support the Northern Paiute people's survival, Sarah served as an interpreter for U.S. government agents and her people for the following 4 years. She also visited Virginia City, Nevada, on a regular basis, where she and her family gave performances to introduce the Northern Paiute culture to white immigrants. Despite these efforts, their situation did not improve. In 1865, the U.S. Army launched a campaign against the Northern Paiute to assert dominance over the tribe, resulting in the deaths of Sarah's mother and infant brother, and her sister perished during the harsh winter that followed. In 1868, the government relocated the surviving Northern Paiute to the Malheur Reservation in Oregon. Sarah began working for the Bureau of Indian Affairs as an interpreter in 1871. She collaborated closely with Samuel B. Parrish, the Indian agent, who sought to assist the Northern Paiute in embracing American-style farming. Sarah worked as one of the first teachers at the school Parrish established on the reservation. At this point, Sarah still believed that accommodation and assimilation were the best strategies for her people's survival. William V. Reinhardt, who took a radically different tack in handling interactions with indigenous tribes, succeeded Samuel B. Parrish in 1876. Reinhardt advocated for Native Americans to surrender to white authority. He didn't pay them fairly for their agricultural labor and sold the supplies sent by the U.S. government to white settlers. He fired Sarah for speaking up for the Northern Paiute during translation and meetings. The Bannock, who shared the Malheur Reservation with the Northern Paiutes, rose up in rebellion in 1878. Sarah was employed by the U.S. Army as an interpreter during the Bannock War. She encouraged the Northern Paiute to cooperate with the Army, but the war ended badly for the Northern Paiute, who were forced to relocate yet again to the Yakima Reservation in Washington Territory. Some Northern Paiute felt betrayed by Sarah's actions. Devastated by these events, Sarah began formally advocating for the Northern Paiute with the U.S. government through letters and petitions. In 1880, she went to Washington, D.C. to meet with the Secretary of the Interior, accompanied by her father and other officials of the Northern Paiute tribe. Sarah managed to secure a letter permitting the Northern Paiute to return to the Malheur Reservation, but the Indian agent at the Yakima Reservation refused to allow them to leave. Furious, Sarah expanded her efforts to secure justice for her people. She started giving lectures in San Francisco, educating white audiences about Indian removal and introducing many to the rich history and culture of indigenous people. William Reinhardt attempted to discredit her by spreading rumors in newspapers that she was a drunk and a sex worker. Nevertheless, Eastern education reformers Elizabeth Palmer Peabody and Mary Peabody Mann were drawn to Sarah's talks. They assisted Sarah in publishing her autobiography, Life Among the Paiutes, in 1883, making it the first written by an indigenous woman in the United States, and they encouraged her to give a lecture tour throughout the Northeast. Sarah delivered over 300 lectures about the history and struggles of the Northern Paiute. She finally became angry and disappointed with white audiences, though. In her talks, she candidly described how white settlers were the aggressors in the West, but her audience was unwilling to abandon their romanticized views of Western settlement. In 1885, she returned to the Yakama Reservation to establish a school for Northern Paiute children. Even this modest effort was doomed to fail. In 1887, the U.S. government passed the Dawes Act, which required indigenous children to attend schools exclusively owned and operated by white people. Consequently, Sarah's school was shut down. Sarah spent her final years quietly and passed away from consumption in 1891. Although she didn't achieve the changes she hoped for her people, her activism left a lasting impact.